I've started to realize something. You guys really like my FNAF videos over my others, but here's the thing. I don't want to be a FNAF tuber. So I'll broaden my horizons from this indie horror franchise to this indie horror Wait, shit. Anyway, today I played 5 SCP-inspired games. I chose to do 5 because 3 was a bit short. Anyway, all of these games will have their itch.io or GameJolt pages in the description. All these games had great things about them and things I personally didn't like, but let's jump into it with SCP-002. Now, if you start the game, the first thing you should see is a small manager window that asks what quality you would like the game in. Aspect ratio, full screen, or windowed. Thank you. I love developers like this. Fuck developers that put settings on ultra automatically. Give us the opportunity to change it before you just throw us in. If you're a developer and you do that, break your computer. Seriously, developers, not everybody has an RTX 950, so stop trying to measure your proverbial dick of visual modeling by making it automatically the highest setting. I'm getting off topic. Anyway, this game has a nice start menu. It shows the SCP front and center. SCP-002 isn't a jump-scare horror monster. I like this screen. Oh wait, not all of you might know every SCP, so I should probably briefly explain them. SCP-002 is a Euclid class anomaly, meaning that it likely won't escape. SCP-002 is known as the living room, as anybody who enters it, well, if they stay too long, they become part of the scenery. Yeah, that chair right there used to be my buddy Phil. Anyway, pretty much every item in here used to be alive. Going to the game itself, it has this nice intro as the D-class, giving us enough backstory to get the gist of it, but not enough to bore me to death. We are D-1225. We're a D-class with the SCP Foundation who's been falsely detained because I didn't kill them. But after this, they'll let me free. Anybody who knows the Foundation knows that this man has a lot of hope and is going to be very, very disappointed. You get brought into the chamber and a scientist gives you your mission. You basically just have to catalog what you see in 002 and confirm if there's any new items. You pick up your pad, pen, and flashlight and make your way to the anomaly. The area is bare and the scientists and guards are far away, which I thought was a pretty cool idea because I thought the lack of overabundant machines and things through the chamber really felt like an SCP chamber. But it might have just been the developer not knowing what to put, which I think is the more likely situation. There's also this neat little thing where if you go past the metal barriers leading to the anomaly, a guard will threaten to shoot you on sight. I walked outside the barriers again, but nothing really happened, so I don't think it's fully implemented, but who knows. Now on to the star itself, 002. It's a bit disappointing. Like, yeah, from the SCP wiki page, the thing looks like it fell off the damn flying spaghetti monster's ball sack, but this model looks a bit too flat, even with the texture and the meat-like spikes that protrude from it. I would have preferred that it have some supports to make it look less like it's just floating there. I understand that the developer may not be the best modeler, or just got this as a free asset, but just some ideas I have. You walk into the anomaly and it's kind of sad. The walls are really flat besides the far wall and the one you just walked out of. The same texture is used for all walls, and it just looks like some bad uncooked bacon. The models in the living room are plain as hell and barely textured, so it just looks really bland and amateur. However, I will say it's cool that when you scan the radio and the TV, they get garbled audio or a creepy screen, but the walls are just so flat and bland, and there are 2 doorways. First, the vault one, which doesn't make sense because you entered a circular door into a circular object, but you're in a square room, double the outside size, with an extension and a regular doorway. It's very crudely cut out. The crude cutout, I think, was just to make it look more organic compared to the walls, but I think it could have been done better. Now, this is no shade to the developer, and while I may kind of be dunking on their project, I think it's actually pretty good. First off, I like the premise of getting to know an innocent D-class. There's also the ending, which has you trapped and turned into a new object, and a new D-class comes to find your remains. I think that premise is really cool. The developer seems to be better with story and ideas rather than modeling, but the core gameplay loop itself was pretty well executed in my opinion. The only sad part is OBS and Outplayed both really hate this game. I love the extra menus too. It's a cute homage to 002, having its article as an extra and its classification. I would have liked to see some more content in general for both the base game and the extras menu, but I was curious about the developer and looked into their other games. A majority being SCP games, with 002 being their latest, but still posted 4 years ago. I don't expect any updates or improvements, but if they're still a developer, I hope they use those games to improve. Next is SCP Revisited. This is a pretty good, but kinda short game. I think it's supposed to be a 2-act game, however it looks like we only have an Act 1. It's based around SCP-087, which was an SCP which was really hard to avoid repetition with. This game also has the option to start with the lower quality settings. Thank you! Only problem is the weird-ass motion blur. Ugh. It really messes with FOV because it blurs your vision so badly. But what I love about the game is the models and design. All of the models look really good. Annoyingly, there are cool radios that don't actually do anything. But you get a neat flip flashlight that you have to find batteries to charge it constantly. You go down like around 20 flights of stairs until you find the entity and die. The goal is to find survivors and find an artifact to help study SCP-087 better. Anyway, for those who don't know, which I'd be surprised to hear you don't, SCP-087 is basically an infinite staircase. The further you go down, the higher chances to see a creepy white face or shadowy figures. Very lethal and very dark. The sad thing is that this is such an overused SCP for horror games, which is why I didn't want to include it. However, the 3 other unique SCP games I tried didn't record well, and this was the best 087 game I found, so deal with it. It's a pretty simple one, but that doesn't mean it's not scary. There is absolutely no sound other than the flick of your flashlight when you turn it on or off. Very, very light footsteps, and whatever decides to run past. I was expecting some bureaucratic, sarcastic researcher to be barking orders over a radio to fill some of the void, but this game uses suspense and silence really well. I love the jump scare at the end, but I was a little disappointed, honestly. The figure isn't too menacing with how it's presented, but it scared me really well, so There's also a goal presented at the beginning, is to get an artifact to help make research easier. I think it could have been better to find it, but die immediately, or get to it and then die on the way out, to make it feel a little bit more satisfying to the player. Good game overall though, good game loop, great execution of horror, but very disappointing when it came to visual storytelling. There's these rooms that you can find on different landings of rooms with lockers or vaults. There's no story with these vaults of either finding another survivor, whether dead or alive, or getting a new entry in the log you get in the beginning. Pretty disappointing with how underused that mechanic is, but good overall. This section was shorter because this game is short and sweet with a tad of anxious suffering. But I guess it's time I should also mention that I recorded and wrote this sick, and OBS and Outplayed were all being pieces of shit and not recording well. Pretty goddamn annoying. Anyway, the next game. Josie is a game about one of my favorite SCPs, Josie the Half Cat. Josie is SCP-529. It's pretty simple to explain. It's half a cat. That's it. Josie is an adorable gray tabby cat that is allowed to walk the facility perfectly fine and cheer up all the staff. The reason she is an anomaly is because she only had her head up to halfway through her body. No back legs, no tail or butt. So on the bright side, they don't need to clean her litter. Josie definitely deserves a game, and I think the game made is perfect for her. Just not for me. Now, I wanted to make this video not entirely horror-focused because then it's just bland. So, this is actually a free-roam puzzle game where you play as Josie the Half-Cat. Now, it is a demo, but it's still fun. I only played through a little bit of the prologue because I couldn't figure out how to get into an event. But you do random things like cheer people up, steal key cards, walk on tables and beds, and just be a cat. You can even push someone into a bottomless pit. This game has a beautiful art style that fits Josie perfectly. I just don't like the controls. It's an isometric angle, which already had me a bit worried. Its controls were even worse though, because the jump is oft-times very floaty and imprecise, and walking is based on the room itself and not the cat's position. The level design is all around good, and the pixel art is done very well for all the characters in my opinion. One thing I didn't like was the beginning of the game. You start in a black void with words popping up around Josie that I'm pretty sure are meant to mean some message like, "Come find me," which personally I don't like, because if there's a find some obscure character story, it'd be a bit disappointing. I wish it was just like a mission to get cheese or something. Because in the SCP article about Josie, they talk about how she loves cheese and becomes very food aggressive over it. I think that'd just be cuter. Also, the weird void areas don't make much sense. Say what you want, they don't need to be there. Nice game overall. I liked it, but not really my cup of tea. I recommend to all of you who watch this to play this game, if it sounds like your type. I'd probably wait for the full game to drop if I ever try replaying the full thing though. Now to move on to the only SCP game I actually didn't know the SCP to. It's called SCP-308. I love how this game represents this SCP, so let's talk about it first. SCP-308 is an Aztec sarcophagus that basically reanimated any dead person or injured person with it, so long as they still have their heart. Doesn't have to beat or anything, just has to be there. And the rest will come up when necessary. This game put me off at first, similar to Josie. It was because it was in an Atari-like art style. I was going to use it as a last-ditch effort, especially when I saw it as a browser version, thinking it'd be crappy, unfinished, and unsatisfying. Boy, was I wrong. The game starts you as a guard who was reanimated from some incident he was in. The scientists tell you to go up to the dock, get stitched up, then write the report on your death. Which, considering the Foundation, is really funny to me. They make the dead guy write up his own autopsy and death report. Anyway, you start writing, then go to sleep. The next day, you're allowed back into the sarcophagus to lay down, and you see a green, distorted world. In this world, everybody you talk to is dead, including a bunch of guards who all say that they had families, pleading for their life or yelling, "Why did you kill them?" This is a surreal sequence. It didn't really make sense, but was pretty interesting. Anyway, you go back to your room, continue your report, then go back to bed. Tomorrow, you find a guard outside the test room that says you can't go back into the sarcophagus. You continue your report and the guard is gone, so you sneak in. You enter the green world briefly and then leave it. The guard is outside the test chamber waiting for you and takes you for interrogation. But during the interrogation, the player character snaps, kills the guard while stealing his rifle, shooting 2 more guards and taking a hit for himself. He leaves the room to get to the medical bay, kills the medic who stitched him up just 2 days prior. Taking the medical kit, you go to your room and kill the assistant who's just trying to get your report. You kill 2 more guards outside the test chamber, then go back into the sarcophagus to sleep once again. But you don't get to go to the green world. This time you're in a red world, a graveyard. Every etched slab of granite has the identity of one of your victims, until you get to your own, where it then shows a cutscene of you dead in the sarcophagus, getting pulled out by another guard. This game gets dark fast, and I'm mad that my preconceived notions on the Atari art style made me wary of it. Another thing that surprised me is that this is based off of an SCP canon from the article itself. The second to last test subject on the official article was an agent that went crazy for the sarcophagus. One other great storytelling element is that throughout the game you find these notes from the SCP article that explain what the anomaly is and the effects it'll have on you specifically. This is a really well-made and creative game in my opinion, and I love the way it piggybacked off the article itself. One of the games I recommend any SCP fan to play. Our last game of the night is SCP Fortification. This is a game I'm split on. This game doesn't focus on a single SCP, but rather the idea of a wave-based defense containment breach, where enemies try to get to the standard site-issued nuke to have it blown up. Also, for those of you watching, in the background, there's going to be barely any gameplay, probably some from the last SCP games, because guess what? This game does not like being recorded either. Your job is to defend the nuke. At the beginning of the game, you get a pistol and have SCP-914 to upgrade your gun for a set of amount of peanuts, which is the currency that the enemies drop, which is kind of funny. SCP-914 being an anomalous machine that anything you put in can be upgraded or downgraded. So if you put a Glock in and put it at the lowest setting, you might get like a trigger, a bullet, and then maybe the compounds to make a gun. But for the highest setting, you might get an M1 Abrams. That's what it is, essentially. You kill enemies to get peanuts and upgrade your gun, or buy turrets, which there are 3 types of. There's the incendiary turret, which shot slower and shot explosives, the slime turret, which made a puddle that pseudo-froze zombies, and lastly, the semi-auto turret, which is basically just like a portal turret.
Are you still there?
But there's like a weird side plot where after some waves you get a panning shot to a scientist, Dr. Bright, who will have some random conversation with an SCP, whether it be 049 or 173. I thought it was meaningless at the time, but I think it's supposed to add more threats, like 049 adds the acid-spitting threats, and then I don't know where those regular zombies come from. I think the one that goes through walls is supposed to be 106 the Old Man, but yeah, that's my best guess. It's a fun gameplay loop with good pixel art, so who cares? I don't like the map though. It's very dark, and the flashlight and overhead view of your turret and the facility is very limited. I think this is supposed to add a challenge to the game, but it's not very challenging at all. Lastly is the guns. So you start out with a basic Glock-looking pistol that reloads quickly with about 12 shots. Next is the shotgun with 6 shots, but more range, more power, and slightly longer reload. Then there's an M16, I assume, with 30 shots, long reload, and kinda ass damage. At this time, you also see a shit ton of screen shake that's supposed to be recoil, and it gives me headaches with how overly used it is. After the shit 16, you get a grenade launcher. 1 shot, decent range with a slow projectile and a mean kick. Really slow reload though. Next is a goddamn RPG, which gives massive range, projectile speed, damage, and long-ass reload times. Lastly is the beast of a machine gun. Don't waste your money on this gun. This gun is shitloads of recoil, long-ass reload times, pitiful damage per shot, and because of how crazy the recoil is, you'll have awful accuracy as well. Don't upgrade past the rocket launcher. But overall, this was a fun game. Nice tower defense game with pretty brain-dead, little strategy or thought needed. It's pretty easy, but a nice time to explore and play for yourself. Well, that's it. A 7-page script and multiple recordings of these games later, and I have this. Now, before I conclude, I want to thank you so much for the recent support. This video is a kind of stop sign to that support, though. I'm not going to do purely horror, I'm not doing purely FNAF, I'm doing what I like. I see that the Yume Nikki videos and everything else doesn't hold a candle to the FNAF stuff. But if you guys enjoy it, then go ahead. Of course, there'll be more horror and more fan games, but that's not all it's going to be. Thanks for understanding. Anyway, these games were fun to play. And I'm glad I got to share a different horror fandom I enjoyed with you guys today. There's always more games to cover, so look forward to those. But the games I covered today were quite fun, and I recommend you play them as well, or just check out the creators on Itch or GameJolt. It's hard to be a developer, even harder to be a good developer. And I could tell that these passion projects had a lot of effort put into them, with how detailed, interesting, and respectful they are to the source material. I intend to do a video on an un-London RPG Maker horror game as well, so look forward to that at some point in the future. Seriously, thank you for watching and all the recent support you guys have shown. I'm majorly disappointed in my setup that I can't give you the best capture or audio as of now, but I'm working towards improving my editing and creativity process in general, as well as a new computer. Like I said, I'm going to bitch about it till I eventually get it, but I'm making progress and I'm glad it's gained a lot of eyes to see it. None of this would be possible without you guys. Thank you, and stay tuned for what I have next. Also, thanks for 1K views on the Euphoric Brothers. I'll probably say it for the next 2 videos, but that's because they were recorded before this. Anyway, thanks. Bye.